Let's talk disability. So about 9 months ago, last Christmas, I had to make a decision. It was starting to get to a point where working full time was getting really hard, but we were getting into Christmas break. So I told myself, give myself a 2-week break and then we'll see how it goes. And once I missed my first deadline, one of the very first ones I've ever missed in my life, I told my boss, I'm like, you know what? I can't keep doing this anymore. It was time. My doctor told me, I'm surprised you lasted as long as you did. And everyone was on board and supportive. But when I made that decision, there's a few things I wish I would have known. And so today, let's talk not only disability, but let's talk about what are the few things that I wish I would have learned before I made this decision to better prepare financially and emotionally to the transition of not working full-time in an office environment, but working full-time on my health and on me, which was a really hard decision to make. And so the first one is financially, to be really honest with you. And, you know, if you guys are really interested in getting into budgets and really dig deep, really dive into financials when it comes to trying to prepare, it's never easy. You just don't know what to expect. And the complications of disability always brings extra costs that are just never exactly the thing you hope they were. They're always more expensive, and that's just due to the industry and the safety precautions and things like that. And a lot of the times, a lot of those things aren't covered. And so I wasn't expecting a lot of the costs. You know, obviously with going on disability, I understood the cost in changing in income and things like that. But I really didn't expect to have to wait over 8 weeks before we got my first pay. We had already started the paperwork 2 weeks before I officially took my disability. We thought we were prepared. Doctor had filled out the paperwork. And, you know, there's just miscommunications, and I'm not going to blame anybody. Things happen. No one's perfect. But to wait 8 weeks to get your first pay is really, really hard, no matter what situation you're in. So do prepare for delays. It's just the reality of how the system works. And expect additional costs to stay on disability. That was one thing I did not expect at all. And really, you know, having to pay for doctor's reports and charts and diagnoses reports and lab work reviews and all this stuff that then needs to get sent to the disability office to be able to be reviewed so that you can continue to get paid, so that you can continue to hopefully, you know, take care of your health the best way you know how. And so those costs do add up really, really quickly. And so make sure that you set aside some funds to be able to make sure that you can continue to be on disability, which seems like the most ridiculous thing to have to say, but that's the reality. Honestly, we had to learn it kind of the hard way. And I don't want you to have to do that. So that's kind of my comment with regards to financials. If you guys want to breakdown and budgets, by all means, let me know. Leave me a comment down below and then we can talk, we can make a video for you guys on that. Moving on to the more emotional side of disability and, you know, putting my career on pause, which, you know, at 27 years old, you don't necessarily expect to have to do. And it was hard. I worked crazy amounts of hours, and it was hard to let go. I loved the team I worked with. I loved what I did. I worked as a project manager, and I just absolutely loved the projects and the events and everything that we did as a team. It was really hard to let that go. And thankfully, my direct manager was really supportive, and, you know, helped me through that transition as much as she could. But if there's one thing that I didn't expect was after my short term, which was about 3 months, when I went on to long-term disability, the organization made kind of a decision to, kind of let me do my own thing, and not keep me as up to date as things were going on, which I completely understand. But it never gave me the sense of being able to say goodbye to the team, knowing that there's a good chance that I may never be coming back. And if I did come back, chances are it was going to be a while, and things in the dynamic of any organization are going to change. Programs are going to change, and you're going to come in and it's not going to be the same as how you left it, or there's a good chance it won't anyways. And so not having that moment after my short term to kind of have a moment with the team and say, you know what, I'm not coming back. We don't think it's going to be anytime soon at best anyways. And not being able to have that moment of goodbye was really hard to cope with emotionally. The team didn't have that opportunity to say goodbye to me, and vice versa. Honestly, I think it affected me way more than anybody else, but it took me a while to emotionally cope with that. And I think had the organization said, you know what, we're going to give you kind of a moment to be able to speak to your team, or at a minimum, your direct team, coming from a smaller organization, it would have been really nice to have that moment. When people typically leave an organization, they'll throw a little party and, say their goodbyes and have their moment with that person. And, they do that for people who leave on mat leave and people who leave permanently from the organization, but they don't do that for people who go on disability. And I think that's unfortunate, because it never gave anybody the chance to just have that moment of closure and be able to kind of move forward. And so, if any organization or HR reps are listening out there, I highly recommend it. Give at least the opportunity, if that person wants to have that moment of closure with the team, and be able to, have that emotional kind of closure, which, it seems like such a little thing, but you know what? I think it would have helped me a lot to know that the team was good and that I had my goodbyes, and they knew that that I wouldn't be coming back anytime soon, and that we could kind of both go our separate ways, knowing that, there might be a day we'd be able to get back together, but that just wasn't the expectation anymore, which would have been really nice to have, in hindsight. So I think that was a really big one for me, especially in the first couple months, just getting used to the shift, of being by myself and not being with the team, and kind of having to support myself as a human, and not having that bouncing board, of a team of 6, which I used to work with. We used to solve problems together, and now I'm kind of on my own trying to, respond to emails and deal with all this stuff with disability. And on top of that, make sure that, I'm on top of everything else associated to my health. And that leads me to my next point, which, you get a lot of emails. For those of you who are more on the admin side, I used to get 50, 60, 70 emails a day that I used to go through. And I expected that to go significantly down, which it did to an extent. But holy Hannah, did I not freaking expect the amount of goddamn emails you have to respond to? If it's not a doctor who needs something, it's the health authority needing something. If it's not, your lab work didn't get done right, so we got to do it again. And you've got all these things going on, and then disability is like, we're doing a review, so heads up, we need all this paperwork done. And then they tell you, guess what? We're sending you a new account rep, which we'll talk about in another video. But, then you have to talk about building a new relationship with that person, because they now hold your fate in their hands as to whether or not they're going to send you that money at the end of each month. And so just don't expect to be email free, and communication is going to be really critical when it comes to your disability and the people that you need to communicate with on a regular basis, like your family physician and your disability rep. you'd be surprised at how much back and forth needs to get done. And, you know, I don't want to bash the system, and that's not what I'm here to do, but we're people who need a break and need to be supported, and the amount of back and forth that needs to be done. And we have to play that middleman. And I think that's insane. Like, I don't know if it's just who we're dealing with or how the system works here, but oh my God, I did not expect having to be literally the project manager of my own health. I'm lucky to have had the background and the systems in place to organize myself, because I don't think I would have been able to cope with the amount of back and forth and emails and communication and phone calls and voicemails and all these things while I'm trying to rest and relax and, you know, just do my daily exercises that I've been given by my physiotherapist. And, you know, the phones just keep ringing. And so be ready for that to an extent. I had to learn to put my phone on Do Not Disturb when I was trying to have a nap so that I didn't get woken up vividly, randomly in the middle of a realm cycle, because it was getting to the point where I couldn't even take a break, which, as a person who's on disability, my job is to try and take care of my health the best way I know how. And sleeping is a huge part of that. And if I can't even take 2 hours to do that without my phone going off, I think that's absolutely ridiculous. And we're going to talk more about that as the weeks ahead, and talk about my disorders and, you know, my autoimmune disorders and what's going on with me. We're going to give you guys some updates as things progress. And stay tuned. So if you'd like to keep following us, you can subscribe down below and watch some of our other videos if you'd like. We've got a whole series on our house reno, which came about as a project due to everything that's going on. So if you want to watch that series roll along, come roll with us.